thoughts for this week are for the students are in verse 35 in John chapter 6. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never go hungry, and he who believes in me will never be thirsty. We're just looking this week, just a few thoughts to encourage those who have enrolled and are thinking of enrolling at Zwemer Theological Seminary. And each week we'll have a few thoughts just from the Bible, just to encourage us to go on and study. Imagine you're in a stadium, a football stadium, and there are 20,000 people there. There's an earthquake and you're locked into that stadium with those people and you can't get out. And they're there for a couple of hours and they're hungry and you have to feed them. And in your luncheon box you've got 2 sandwiches. It would be an absolute miracle if you could feed all those thousands of people and with those 2 sandwiches. Well, that's exactly what happened here in the passage of John chapter 6. Our Lord fed 5,000 people. Actually, if you look at the 4 accounts in the Gospels, you'll see that it was actually more than 5,000. There was also women and children, which would have taken it up to many thousands. And yet the Lord miraculously, wonderfully fed all these people with a few barley loaves and a few fishes, which would be the size of sardines. Now, I want to just have 3 points here. Christ's love, Christ's power, and Christ's rejection. There's a chap called Thompson who sort of failed at everything. He joined the army and he failed, and he failed at various things. And one day he went onto the street and became a down and out. Well, a couple in London saw him and who knew him and took him home. And then this Thompson, he became a Christian, and he found out he had a gift of being a poet. And so God took this person who seemed hopeless and took this life and gave it a new life. And that shows how practical God is. God is a practical God. He cares for our practical needs. In John chapter 6, our Lord saw all the people there. And our Lord saw them, and he helped them, and he ministered to them, and he provided for them, because he's a practical God. And you might be worried about finances, about work, about the future, but God's a practical God, and he cares for your needs practically. So it's important to remember that whatever you're worried about today, he really cares about that. But it's no good saying, well, Lord, you're going to help me practically, because there's another issue. He not only loves us practically, he loves us spiritually too. Just a remark, if you want to meditate about not worrying about your practical needs, look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 25 and 34 for your home meditation. But anyhow, imagine, we've seen the oil rig situation with BP, but imagine you're on an oil rig and your friend falls into the sea, but the oil rig is on fire as well. So you pull your friend out of the water, he's on the rig, but it's on fire. So you get a helicopter, or you call for a helicopter, you get them winched up and to safety. So you've helped them practically out of the water, but there's another issue. There's the fire on the oil rig. Well, Jesus helps us practically, pulls us out of the water, but he wants to help us spiritually. There's a fire. There is a heaven and a hell, and if we walk away from God, we're caught in disaster, and he wants to help us spiritually, and he helped us spiritually. And we can never outgrow the gospel. We can have degrees upon degrees, we can have PhDs upon PhDs, but you cannot outgrow the love of God. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes on him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And Jesus died on that cross. He was whipped for you. He had the thorns upon his head, and he died upon that cross, and every sin that you committed, he took the punishment for your sin. Why? Because he loved you, and he wanted you to come home to the Father. So he's not only a practical God in the practicalities of life, he's a practical God in dealing with your spiritual needs as well. Secondly, we've looked at Christ's love, and secondly, let's look at Christ's power. Imagine you're in a psychiatric ward, and you see a person there. They're locked into the room with a locked door, but they're also in a straitjacket, and they can't get their arms out. And you know, we live like that. We are in a locked cell, and we have our arms straitjacketed. We get down. We feel that we can't go forward in the future. There's brick walls. There's things holding us back. It might be our past. It might be problems in the present. But we just can't seem to go forward. Well, imagine a nurse going into that room, unlocking the door, taking that person, taking the straitjacket off, and taking the person home and looking after that person. That's what Jesus has the power to do in your life. He wants to go into your life. He wants to break down the door. He wants to take the straitjacket off. He wants to pull anything down that is pulling you away from following him. Our Lord, he took a few fishes and he took some barley loaf. Now, a barley loaf, the Pharisees said that those who were to offer to the temple an offering, if you've committed adultery, you should take barley loaf, because barley loaf was seen as food that was a waste of time. It was no good. It was only fit for sinners, for no-gooders, for people who were not worthless. And Jesus took the barley loaf and he fed 5,000 people with it, or more than 5,000 people. And that's a picture. You and I might say, well, I'm never going to be a good theological seminary student. I'm never going to be an evangelist. I'm never going to do anything good for God. I fail all the time. I'm nothing. I'm not important. Well, God takes your barley loaf of a life, and he takes it, my friend, and he will break it into something beautiful, that it will be a blessing to many, many people, even thousands of people. You might say to yourself, well, you know, there are areas in my life that have been a struggle for years. I can't change. It's impossible to change. There's situations in my family life. I'm studying for seminary. I'm doing Christian work, but there are situations in my life, in my family life, that seem impossible. It's all impossible. But do you remember these words? With man, this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God. Mark chapter 10, verse 21. All things are possible with God. Your situation can change because God can do the impossible. Your life can change for the better because God can do the impossible. My dear friends, there is no family, there is no nation, there is no individual life that is clouded by darkness, cannot change, but by the power of God. God will come into your life and he will change your life and he will move into your life because he has the power to do it, and he will do it, friend. Do not walk in darkness. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk defeated anymore. You're not a defeated child of God. You're a child of the living King, and he loves you, and he has the power to change you and to change your life. And you need to stop looking down and look up to Jesus and start meditating on his majesty and his glory and who he is, because he is the one who loves you, friend. He loves you, and you must not walk in defeat no more, but you must walk in victory and live in the power of Christ, because he loves you and he has the power to look after you and change your life. And finally, Christ's rejection. Now in John chapter 6 verse 14 and 15, they wanted Jesus to be a king because Jesus had fed them, all these 5,000 people, many thousands of people. He fed them, and they thought, well, if we make him king, we'll even have more blessing. Jesus will give us more things. They didn't want Jesus to change their heart. Jesus, give us practical things, but don't change my heart. They were really rejecting Jesus. Don't be a rice Christian. There are people who are rice Christians. They become followers of Jesus because of what they can get out of Jesus. Jesus will give me blessings. Jesus will give me practical things.